What's up, guys? It's Dale again. On the channel today, I have a special guest. His name's Mike Fuehrer of Navigation Nowhere. Some of you may know him and follow him from Instagram and YouTube. And with that, I've got some questions lined up, so we'll get started. What's up, Mike? Hi.
What's
Number
up?
one,
Oh boy.
can you give us the Cliff Notes version of who Mike Fuehrer was before Bus Life?
Before bus life. Well, before I bought my first school bus, Navi, I actually was in graduate school. And before bus life, I was actually heading down an academic route. I was applying and going towards a PhD program where I would eventually become more in the professorship route of teaching actually in college. And through some of those programs and people that I met and influences in my life, I kind of realized that as much as I love learning and academics, I actually loved the people more. My studies were specifically in psychology and cultural anthropology, and it's kind of funny because I loved studying people and cultures, but in the same way I started to realize that all I was doing was reading books and not actually spending any time with people and cultures, and that's kind of where I decided that I wanted to switch things up and not go the same route. So I ended up, when I finished my master's, I told my parents that I was going to move home and buy a school bus, and they said, well, sure, you can move home, but you better build somewhat quick because, you can't let it go on forever in the driveway. So I moved home, bought a school bus, and started building it out, and that's kind of how I ended up where I am today.
Okay, that kind of covers the second question, but I'll ask it anyway, and maybe you want to expound a little bit on it. But the question was going to be, what happened to get you started into bus life? And you explained a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But can you why all of a sudden a bus? Why not just an apartment off in some small town?
Sure. Yeah, I think the big thing for me was when I was in graduate school, I was living in a small apartment. It couldn't have been more than like 60, 70 square feet. It was a small one room, just fit a bed and a desk. And I started to realize that during that time period, that's actually all I needed. I really didn't have any goals at that point to think like, oh wow, I can't wait till I buy a big old house, because the truth was I didn't know what to put in that small room. So tiny spaces and minimalism was already very comfortable with me. I think what ended up pushing me towards a school bus or just traveling in general rather than just finding a small apartment was that during my graduate school years, I was looking to start working for some companies, and those companies were actually based in New York City. And when I started looking at rent prices and started looking at the housing situations and the travel situations and commuting, and then I started looking at the expenses versus salary and all these different things, I just started to add up the numbers and add up my life and say that it just wasn't worth it. So that's where I kind of decided that because of the comfortable nature of me living in the my apartment in college, and then my realization that I didn't want to go live in a city. I've always wanted to travel. I figured why not tie the two together, and that's kind of where the whole thing started. I actually personally wanted to build a tiny house on a trailer at first, but after traveling and backpacking and doing a lot of adventures on my own, I started to realize that a tiny home was not going to tow very well for what I wanted to do. I wanted to get off into the country, and it just isn't that easy to tow a tiny home into the backcountry. So that's where I started looking into vans and campers and things like that. And my dad actually was the one who came up with the idea of a school bus, because he kind of remembered people used to do it back in the 60s and 70s. And he was like, hey, I remember seeing that. You should look into that. And pretty much I think 3 days later, I ended up buying a school bus off of Craigslist. And that's where it all started.
Okay. What would you say has been your favorite moment in bus life so far? I know you...
Man.
You know,
favorite moment. I couldn't define this as like a favorite moment. I'm trying to, because there's so many. Every expense. Why we do this. But I don't know.
Any place, person, time of year.
I think it's more of just ideas, like concepts that remember me. It's not one moment, but I remember moments sitting on top of Navi on the rooftop deck with some friends in the Badlands and just sitting there watching the sunset. I remember doing the same thing in Glacier, Alaska, California. And I think when you ask the question, my first thought is those memories as an idea. And I think the reason why those that would almost be my answer, is because I think the concept of Navi was the people that were a part of it. And that was really important to me. And the fact that when you ask what was my favorite place or part, it's not really the place or part, it's what made that place or part important, which were the people and memories in those locations. So one thing I always try to explain to people when this type of question comes up is I love Yellowstone and I love Glacier National Park, but I've been there 5 times. And every single time I can say is just as amazing as the last time because I was with a different person each time. So I got to see the experience through their eyes rather than just mine. Mm-hmm. So in that way, they became my favorite locations because of the memory that went along with it. And I think that's why I keep doing this, is because they don't stop. Those memories just keep getting created. And
cool.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Now, everybody knows you from Navigation Nowhere, Navi, the bus. Big bus, 43 feet.
37.
37 feet. Okay. Yeah. It seems bigger.
Yeah.
So why anybody that's following you on YouTube knows that you're in the middle of a new bus build.
Sure.
What made you decide to transition into a short bus from a long bus? You're doing kind of the opposite of what most people do. A lot of people have a house and they transition into a big bus.
Yeah.
You started in a big bus.
Yep.
And are transitioning to a smaller bus. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of just time and also just the desire to do something new. The reason why I would say time is because I lived in Navi, my big 37-foot school bus, for almost 3.5 years. I did over 150,000 miles in that bus, traveled all over North America. And the one thing I found was that it was almost too comfortable, if that's a good way to say it. It was built for people to be with me, but for me to live full time. And what I started to realize was when I didn't have people with me or I wanted to go travel certain locations, it was just too big for me. So what I kind of decided was I wanted to build a short bus that was under 21 feet so that I could essentially get anywhere that I could think I'd want to get, but build it in a way that I could still have people with me. So the short bus is still going to be able to sleep 4 inside of it. The big bus could sleep up to 8, so there's a decrease there, but I can still have people with me. And people can always put tents outside or put them on the roof. And I think I was just looking for a different build and a different adventure, and I think Dale said it good one time. It just felt like time to transition, and it was a natural switch. So Navi, if anyone's wondering, my green bus Navi is currently, I'm actually moved back into it while I'm building the short bus. And previously my parents were using it, and in the future it's actually going to be used as well in different ways.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Speaking of Navi, what would you say your favorite feature of that bus is?
Ooh.
As opposed to...
what is my favorite feature of Navi? Oh, man. You're like asking me, like, what's my favorite part of, like, my baby?
Well, then just
I love that. I love all of it because I literally spent a year designing and building it for my needs because it's very custom for what I wanted. So there's not much I don't like about it because if I didn't like it, I just rebuilt it. But I would definitely say, I think if you ask me like what's most important to me, I really like my kitchen in that bus. I've really enjoyed cooking over the years for people who come over to visit. I like the ability to kind of have potlucks, which we've had many on my school bus at festivals and events and stuff. So maybe the kitchen, just because I like what the kitchen represents. But in terms of the bus, I can't necessarily say that I don't like anything. Like I didn't do anything that I would say don't do in your own bus.
Right.
Because it worked for me.
Right. And if you find something that you don't like, you can always
you just fix it. Yeah, you redo
it,
you fix it. So at this point, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that bus. It's just, I don't know. It's yours. You know, like. It's a custom build.
Okay, on a related topic to a question I asked a minute ago, I asked you what your favorite part of bus life or favorite moment in bus life is. What was your worst?
The worst.
If you can...
Yeah, I think I actually answered this one a few days ago. Someone was asking me a question online. The worst part about living on the road, I think, is not as much now because I've experienced doing it. But in the beginning, I remember the worst part was not knowing where to stay. I'm naturally a more cautious person. When it says no trespassing, I'm usually the one to read the sign. So I do have a lot of fun. I do some crazy things and all, but I'm a bit of like a nervous, type person in those ways. So for me to just park in a Walmart or park in a rest area at the beginning, it was very uncomfortable. And I think that was the worst part for me because I always felt on edge. I never knew if I was allowed to stay there, if someone was going to knock on my door. But the good thing is that over the years, it's become more and more comfortable with knowing where I'm allowed to stay, where I can park, what are safe locations, what are not safe locations. So I think that would actually be the worst part for me before, maybe not as much now because that's been solved by just experience. But yeah, I think the worst thing would actually just be like that. Sometimes you just want, I don't know, like you just want to know that you're in a good spot where you can sleep all night, and sometimes you're just traveling and I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess for me, I've always found a little bit of comfort in the actual rest areas and the Walmart simply because I know it's a lit area.
Yeah.
Rest areas, people, they expect you to be there.
Yeah.
Most Walmarts, as long as you're respectful to their property,
For
they're
sure.
respectful.
Yeah.
Mine would have been finding someplace off the beaten path.
Yeah, and then that's funny because for me it'd be the opposite because I grew up in more of the camping backcountry space, so I felt a lot more comfortable with being in the middle of nowhere, whereas being around a lot of people and in the city and kind of not knowing the zoning laws and rules and parking. That was actually my biggest barrier when I first started, which is kind of funny how everyone has, everyone's going to have their own experience. It's very personal, which I think is a good point that you brought up.
Okay, this is kind of a related question, but do you feel like you've ever been treated unfairly or unjustly because you were living and traveling in a bus? I mean, you hear a lot of horror stories. Oh, the cops came and knocked on my door and I had to leave, blah, 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 and this and that. How do you feel about that?
No, I've actually never had an issue in my green bus, Navi. During that time, I've had park rangers and stuff knock on my door, ask me to kind of move because I'm not in a good spot or I'm blocking something I didn't see because it was dark. But not in the bus, and I don't know if that's because it's more built out, so they kind of assume someone's living in it. It's not just like a car down by the river. When I was more car camping, I used to travel and live in a Nissan Sentra for a bit when I was traveling in a Highlander. In those trips, I did get a bit more like in the sedan. I definitely got questioned and stopped a bit. But I think that's just more to do with the fact that the vehicle is from out of state. It was from the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. It just looks all messed because like the back window's just full of stuff. I mean, I was living out of a car traveling for fun.
Right.
So I think that maybe the perception of that had something to do with it. But no, I mean, for the most part, I feel like most interactions I've had, as long as you're open and upfront with whoever's talking to you, I mean, a property owner, a national parks agent, or whoever, most of them get what we're doing. We're not the first traveler they've ever seen. So they're usually pretty good about, hey, you can't go here, but if you go 5 miles down the road and make a left, there's a spot there that you can park. And that's what I found mostly now in my bus. So, I mean, in my experience, no, but that's also just my experience. I don't know what maybe other people have other experience on their own,
and we're focused on your experience.
So sorry. Yeah, my experience, no. My experience, no. But I have heard, scenarios
and
where,
that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
Because I've heard like these horror stories, and sometimes you go, it can't have been all that bad, Yeah. And so
I mean, I can see, and this is why like my suggestion to that is, go into every situation not knowing what that person's experience is before. So like you don't know, maybe that Walmart employee 2 nights before dealt with a drunk person living in their RV in the parking lot, and then you happen to be the next person he interacts with.
Right.
So in that case, going into it with a little bit of understanding and patience of kind of like, I'm staying here and they're letting me, so like I'm already the guest.
Right.
Exactly. I think is a good perspective because if they ask you to leave, okay, fine, move on. And I think that's a good way to go.
There
for
again,
it.
that for me, I've only had a cop knock on my door one time, and he just came up, was real nice. What's going on? I told him I was on my way to a tiny house festival, and he said, "Oh, okay, no problem."
Yep.
see you, have a good time.
Yep.
I actually invited him to the festival because it was just right down the
Oh,
road.
right down the road.
So I don't know if he came, but I did tell him that, hey,
Yeah.
first responders and law enforcement get in free.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so he may have showed up. I don't know. Okay, that leads us into another question.
Okay.
Which you're covering a little bit. But what's your favorite way of finding a camping spot? Do you use? I know there are a lot of online apps and things that are coming online now that weren't there, 2 years ago. So, is there anything you can recommend?
So I'll answer it in two ways. My most used resource is going to be the iOverlander app, which is an app you can download for free on your phone. It has a lot of really free boondocking, more boondocking than like campsites or paid sites. But I definitely like that one just because that's really more off the beaten path type camp spots. But in general, I would actually say that my favorite way to get sources, which is not the easiest, is local residents. A lot of times when you're in areas, you're not going to know on a map the local area, but obviously the local hunters, the local hikers, the people who you see out and about, they're going to know the area, so they're going to know the good places to go. So, for instance, where I'm currently located, where I now live when I'm not traveling, there's quite a few local boondocking spots that aren't on any maps. But the locals know that they're really awesome spots down by the river, over on the lake, and the only way you would find those spots is if you were to talk to one of us. So, iOverlander would be my best resource. My favorite resource would be getting involved in the community and trying to find local places that can be recommended, because it's always going to be quieter, it's always going to be better, and you're going to see something that you won't find on a map. So
Right, yeah. And you're right about that. I have found that anytime you can go into an area and get with somebody that knows the area,
yeah,
and become friends, even if it's only for an hour,
yeah,
that it's a lot nicer, and they do know the area, so
Yeah.
they can recommend those things. Are there any items that you recommend that somebody that's building a bus or traveling in a van, car, however, any like camping items that you would recommend?
like must-haves.
Yeah, a shovel, extra roll of toilet paper, that type of,
That's
or
a
is
hard,
it
that's a hard one.
more of a personal choice?
I think it is a bit of a personal choice. I'm trying to think of something that, no matter what situation I'd be in a bus, this would be something I'd want with me. I don't know. It's so hard because I lived in a car for so long with no power and no water that I'm thinking you don't really need power and water. You could survive. Something that. I think something that maybe something people don't think about, which I know I didn't when I first moved into my bus Navi. Just typical road safety stuff. Like people, they don't have, say, road flares, or they don't have the road triangles to put out when a breakdown happens. They don't have maybe a Good Sam or AAA or some type of membership to help them out, because a lot of times you think about traveling on the open road, but you never think about what happens when you break down. And the truth is, just as often as something goes wrong in the house that you currently live in, something's going to go wrong with your bus, because no matter what, things break. Water heaters go, electrical panels, water pumps. Well, on a bus, sometimes engine, coolant lines, solar lines. Things just happen.
Right.
So I think thinking ahead to being prepared with the road triangle, so if you break down, you can safely be parked on the side of the road, or any of those types of things. So I don't know, maybe those are essentials that a lot of people don't think about, but honestly, I have had some pretty good breakdowns and have been stuck some locations, and I'm happy I had, at that time I had a AAA membership where they actually gave me a free tow and got me somewhere safe. And the one time some guy came and took my tire off for me, because you're dealing with big truck tires on the big buses. So I think those are worthy investments for you, because you only use them maybe once or twice, but you'll be happy when you use them.
Yeah, and possibly say like a small tent.
Yeah.
Because if you do break down,
Yeah.
unlike your home, your vehicle is your home.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be in a shop somewhere
Yep.
for 2-3 days
Yeah.
or longer,
Yep.
they don't necessarily want you living.
No.
So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you have a tent, you might be able to say, hey, there's a park right down the road here.
Yep.
Could you guys,
Drop me off.
drop me
yeah.
off down here, and
Yep.
I'll be able to walk.
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah, I've had that happen. I know a friend of mine who just got a hotel room. I know another friend of mine whose bus broke down, and the shop said they couldn't get to the bus for 3 days, so they just let him park in the parking lot, in the bus, broken down. And then when they actually did maintenance on the bus, then they got a hotel room for a night.
Right.
I haven't heard anyone camping, but that's a good suggestion too. I mean, if you don't want to pay for a
Yeah,
hotel,
I mean,
go
if
get
there's
a
someplace close, I mean, yeah.
yeah, go get a $15 a night campground, and you're good to go.
Okay, as a YouTuber, do you have any, and I know this might put you on the spot a little bit with a lot of your friends, but is there any non-bus life channels that you like to watch, or even into bus life? Who would some of your favorites as far as content and what you enjoy watching?
Yeah, so obviously I do follow a lot of my friends, van lifers, bus lifers, people in sailboats, within the travel adventure world that I'm friends with. But in terms of like people that I just follow in general, I think it's kind of funny. It's like, what does your subscription feed look like? My subscription feed on my YouTube channel, my personal one, because I don't use my Navigation Nowhere one as like a watch channel, but my personal YouTube channel, most of it is like information, like construction. I follow a guy, RR Building. He builds pole barns, backcountry sheds, timber frames, things like that. I follow a couple car mechanic guys. Some people out there, I know he's got a huge channel like Project Farm. It's a guy who he just tests products next to each other, like which oil is the best, which grinder blade's the best, and he just does really really good straightforward tests on them just to say like what do these products actually perform. So most of the channels I actually watch, it might sound nerdy, but are like educational, because I'm always trying to learn more about building, construction, wood scribing, solar, so I try to follow as many channels of other people in other niches that are doing creative things that I'm interested in learning, because I'm always trying to learn something new to add to one of my builds, or just learn something new that I can just shove into my brain and then probably never use it, but I'm glad it's there, because maybe one day, I'll need to know which viscosity oil is the most important for a 2004 Honda.
Okay, and we're at 22 minutes, Mike.
Wow.
So the last question
relates
back to the first question.
Okay.
Where do you see yourself in 4 years?
Oh gosh, I don't even know where I see myself in 4 days. 4 years.
Well, I figure you've been at this for 4 years.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that the change from 4 years ago to 4 years now is over the last, I'd say 2 years, I've kind of taken Navigation Nowhere as just a social tag and kind of my bus. And I've actually turned it into a company, an idea. And my goal over the next 4 years is to kind of take that idea and let it just grow in, I'm not exactly 100% sure, but I guess the best thing I could say is in a communal way. I really would like to create Navigation Nowhere into something that actually more directly helps people get into this lifestyle, learn about this lifestyle, meet other people who are part of it. I'm not 100% sure what it looks like, and I'm working tirelessly every single day to make it happen. But yeah, I just think that over the last 4 years, I've been able to meet and learn from a lot of people. And I feel like I'm at the point now where Navigation Nowhere as a company, I feel like could be something that could now give back to the people who've helped me, but also to people who are coming up now and trying to start doing this. So it's kind of like I've learned and I've experienced from people, and now I'm trying to find a way to then do that for others. And I think Navigation Nowhere is a way to do that. So in 4 years, I hope that whatever I'm trying to do is influencing, helping someone, changing someone's life. I don't know. Just, if it's just one person, kind of thing. But I hope that in 4 years I'm still doing what I'm doing, and see where it goes.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you taking your time out of your day to answer these questions for us today. I really do appreciate it. We got about 30 seconds left here.
What?
So if you want to, why don't you give everybody your Instagram and Facebook and all your social media?
Yeah, so my name's Michael Fuehrer, and all my social tags, websites, and everything are under Navigation Nowhere. So if you type in Michael Fuehrer Navigation Nowhere, you'll most likely find something within one of the social platforms. But yeah, you can check it out on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, website. I mean, we have a platform on almost everything. But yeah, you can contact me there, check it out, see what we're about, and hopefully you find something helpful. So thanks, Dale, for having me, because I know me and Dale have been hanging out and been friends for many years. Dale's a really good friend of mine, and I'm thankful that he wanted to do a little interview and share it with all of you.
All right, Mike, appreciate it, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
All right, thanks.